Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Enota Digital Storytime. Today we're focusing on an author that has touched your life. His name is Chris Van Allsburg, and I'm almost positive this guy has given you hours of enjoyment and you probably didn't even know it. But before we get into that, I've got to say welcome to your Enota Digital Storytime. Thank you, Nutsy. Well, you know what, guys? I like to start things off with Guess the Sound, and it's hard for me to get my computer from work to work with my microphone here at home and to work with YouTube because I've never had to upload this stuff before, and apparently the way my audio is encoding isn't compatible with YouTube. So I've changed a lot of stuff, and it's taken a lot of time. So hopefully most of my sound's coming through good, but I've had trouble with this Guess the Sound audio, and I don't know why. Hopefully I'll have it figured out by next week. But in the meantime, turn your speakers up as loud as they can go and try to guess what this sound is. Here we go. Get your siblings to help you. Listen up. 1, 2, 3. All right, that's super quiet. I'm trying to turn it up again. I've got it as loud as it'll go. Here we go. Listen. It's short. All right, let's see if you can guess what it is. Give me a big drum roll. It is someone trying to start a lawnmower, which was me on Saturday trying to get my lawnmower started. But you know what, guys? Today, we're talking about Chris Van Allsburg and his elegant worlds. Mr. Sanders loves this guy and this author, so I want you to crisscross. I want you to pull up a chair and listen. As Mr. Sanders tells you about, I'm going to turn this volume up. And I'm going to struggle with volume throughout this episode. And I'm sorry about that, but it'll all get better in a few days. So anyways, Chris Van Allsburg was born June 8th, 1949. He's an American illustrator and writer of children's books. There's his wooden dog. He's won 2 Caldecott medals for U.S. picture book illustrations. One was for Jumanji in 1981. The other was from Polar Express. Do those names sound familiar? They should. The Caldecott Award is one of the most prestigious medals for children's books in America. So, he was also a Caldecott runner-up in 1980 for his Garden of Abdul Ghazai. And for his contribution as a children's illustrator, he's won numerous awards because he is one of the best children's illustrators, in my opinion. He even received an honorary doctorate of human letters from the University of Michigan in April 2012. Doesn't he look good there? Talking to his alma mater. Well, Van Allsburg was born in East Grand Rapids, Michigan, the second child of Richard and Doris Christensen Van Allsburg. All right. When Chris was born, his family lived in an old farmhouse. His family then moved to a new house at the edge of Grand Rapids when Chris was just 3 years old. He used to walk to school, by the way. Can you imagine that these days, right? Well, he attended middle school and high school at East Grand Rapids, and Van Allsburg attended the College of Architecture and Design at the University of Michigan, which in that time included the art school. And he majored in sculpture, and here's some of the sculptures he's made throughout his career. Aren't those really unique? Look at how he blends the mundane, normal things like a dresser with something cool like this ball pushing up a fake rug. That's all wood right there. And I really like this coffee spilling. I think that's quite beautiful. And you'll see these same themes come up in his children's books. He graduated from the University of Michigan in 1972, and he continued his education at Rhode Island School of Design. In 1975, he graduated and set up his own studio to be a sculptor. But while Van Allsburg focused on sculpture, he struggled for times in the studio, and he began to make funny sketches while he was there. And his wife thought the drawings and his ideas would make good illustrations for children's books. And after his wife showed his pictures to a children's book editor, he wrote his first book, The Garden of Abdul Ghazai, in 1979. There it is. And he achieved some success. And one of the reasons his books are really unique is because he draws from the level of kids. So many of the pictures in his books will take the perspective that a kid has when they look up at adults, because you know, an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old will see the world from a lower level than adults. This viewpoint likely appeals to children because it conveys the world as they see it, not the way adults see it. Well, he also has some dark themes in his work, and that's really kind of unique for a children's book author. For instance, he'll have kids get in super danger, and he explores the darker side of human nature. For example, in his book, The Sweetest Fig, there's this selfish man who's suddenly given the opportunity to make his wildest dreams come true, and his greed eventually leads to his downfall. That's a really good book if you guys want kind of a weird or scary book. And it's not an unusual moral for a children's book, but Van Allsburg's chilling characterization of the man brings a frightening tone to the narrative. Well, morality tales. He also likes to teach a moral or a lesson in his stories. Now, for instance, in The Wretched Stone, in which a ship's crew is mesmerized and corrupted by a strange rock, it's supposed to be an allegorical tale, so it's supposed to be like a metaphor about the negative impact of television. So that was pretty cool. Other literary themes include dreams, the environment, and items with lives of their own, like in the movie Jumanji and Zathura. The board games in Jumanji and Zathura have their own wills and minds. So in Jumanji and Zathura, two books which are almost the same story, with the only difference being the theme of the board game and the events which cause the problems when they're playing, those stories have an environment that won't let you stop. So the environment is controlling the characters in the story. For example, in Jumanji, you can't stop playing till you get to the end, and the same is true for Zathura. Well, he's got a large number of books that you can find at any bookstore or library across our country. I've already told you about a lot of these. Jumanji, many of these have been made into awesome movies. The Wreck of the Zephyr, The Mysteries of Harris Burdick is a really mysterious book. Look at this one, scary. Ghosts. The Polar Express is super well known. It's an awesome movie starring Tom Hanks. The Stranger is another mysterious one. The Z Was Zap, that's an alphabet book. That'd be fun to read with your brothers and sisters if you had little brothers or sisters. There's also Two Bad Ants. Swan Lake, which was written for his daughter, Just a Dream. There's The Wretched Stone, The Widow's Broom. This is a Halloween book. And this one's kind of a spooky book too, The Sweetest Fig, where a man's greed is his own undoing. There's Bad Day at Riverbend, A City in Winter, The Veil of Snow. I said that wrong, The Veil of Snow. And there's Zathura. That's one of Mr. Sanders' personal favorites. Many more. Queen of the Falls tells about a young lady who rode Niagara Falls in a barrel. Not what I want to do on my day off. So there's many. All right, like I told you before, a lot of these books, you're already familiar with the basic plots because you've seen the movies. There's the old Jumanji, and of course there's a new one too. There's the Polar Express, which is super famous, Zathura, and also Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. Well, I thought it would be cool if Mr. Sanders read you Zathura, A Space Adventure, written and illustrated by Chris Van Allsburg. We're going to read it right now. "Mom!" Danny Budwig yelled. "Mom!" Walter and Danny's mother stopped at her son's bedroom door. "Walter," she said, "get off your brother. Honestly, if you don't stop pulling on his nose like that, it'll end up looking like an elephant's trunk." "Oh, yeah?" said Walter. "Then he'll need the ears to match." He let go of Danny's nose and grabbed his ears. "Enough!" Miss Budwig shouted. "Danny started it. Look at what he did," Walter yelled, picking up his walkie-talkie. The antenna was dangling by a wire. "See? He breaks everything." "I'm sure he didn't mean to," Miss Budwig said. "Was an accident," Danny mumbled. From downstairs, Mr. Budwig called to his wife. "We're going to be late!" Miss Budwig gave her son a kiss goodbye. "I set some dinner out in the kitchen. Dad and I shouldn't be too late." "Can't you take him with you?" Walter whined. "I don't want him here." "Oh, have you ever wanted to play with your brother or sister and they didn't want to play with you? Doesn't that make you feel sad sometimes?" After their parents left, Walter sat down in front of the television. "Can me and you go out and play catchy-catch together?" Danny asked. "It's you and I," said Walter. "Not me and you, baby. And the answer is no." But Danny really wanted to play. He threw Walter his hat, but Walter just ignored him. Then he tossed him a baseball and beamed him on the head. Walter jumped up. "All right, you little fungus! Now you're really going to get it!" Danny bolted out of the room, down the hall and out the front door with Walter close behind. They ran to the park across the street, but Danny couldn't outrun his brother. Walter tackled him. I'm telling! Danny squealed as Walter got a grip on his nose and pulled. Then he let go. "Hey, what's that?" he said. Right next to the boys was a long, thin box resting against a tree. Walter got off his brother and picked it up. "Aw, it's just some dumb old game. Here," he said, poking Danny in the stomach with the box. "Ah! It's for babies. Baby! Wet! Like you! Wet!" He trotted off as Danny read the words on the box. Jumanji, a jungle adventure. Danny stuck the game under his arm and ran home after his brother. Back inside, Danny looked at the box. It was covered with pictures of jungle animals. He took out dice and some tokens and a very plain game board. Walter was right. It was a babyish game and probably boring too. Danny started to put it away, but discovered, jammed tightly into the bottom of the box, another board. He banged the box on the floor, and out it popped. The board was more interesting than the other one. It showed flying saucers, rockets, and planets in outer space with a path of colored squares leading from Earth to a purple planet called Zathura and back to Earth. Danny put a token on Earth and then rolled the dice. After he moved along the path, something surprising happened. A buzzing sound came from the board, and with a click, a small green card popped out of the edge right in front of him. He picked it up and read, "Meteor shower. Take evasive action." "Hey, Walter," Danny started to say. "What does when he was interrupted by a noisy sound coming from the roof. "Ah! He said. Walter looked up from the television. "Holy smoke," he said. "Must be a hailstorm." "It's not hail," shouted Danny, holding up the card. "It's meteors." The noise grew louder, like 1,000 golf balls bouncing off the roof. The room got so dark. Walter turned on his lights. Then, kaboom! A rock the size of a refrigerator fell through the ceiling and crushed the television. "See?" Danny said. "I told you. Meteors." Walter stared at the hole in the ceiling. "Okay," he agreed. "Meteors. But how'd it get so dark so fast?" Through the hole he could see what was left of his parents' bedroom, and beyond that a black, star-filled sky. "It looks like night up there." "It's not night," said Danny. "It's outer spacey!" "What are you talking about? Geez, outer space," Walter muttered as he went to the front door. "We just lost track of time. It's night, that's all." He threw open the door and almost took a step outside before he realized there was no outside there anymore. At least not the one he expected. "OMG!" he said. "See?" said Danny. "Outer spacey." He led Walter back to the living room and showed him the Zathura game board in the card. Walter sat with his head in his hands, gazing at the path of colored squares that wound around the board and ended up back at Earth. "Looks like," said Danny, "we keep on playing, or we're stuck up here forever." "Great," said Walter, "up here with you forever." He took a deep breath, put a token on Earth, then rolled the dice and moved along the path. The board started buzzing, and then, click, a card popped out. He studied it silently and then tossed the card on the board. Danny leaned forward and read, "The polarity on your gravity belt is reversed." "I wonder what that means." He looked up, but Walter was gone. "Walter!" he called out. "Up here!" answered Walter. Danny looked up and saw his brother pressed against the ceiling. I've lost my gravity!" "That's not all you're going to lose," Danny said nervously, because he could see that Walter was being pulled slowly towards the hole in the ceiling in a lonely trip into outer space. Walter realized it too and started clawing at the ceiling, but he couldn't keep himself from moving closer and closer to the hole. Danny looked around. Lying next to the meteor was the cord from the shattered television. He tossed it to Walter, who knotted it tightly to his belt, and Danny grabbed the end of the cord and tied his brother to the sofa. Whoa. Danny rolled the dice and moved his token along the path. Click. Out popped another card. "Your gyroscope is malfunctioning." Suddenly the house tilted. Everything in the room slid to one side. Danny got buried under a mountain of furniture. He slowly dug himself out, clutching the game, only to find that Walter was floating back towards the hole in the ceiling. Danny tied him to the sofa again and handed up the dice, and Walter rolled and got his gravity back, dropping to the floor with a thud. Danny moved his piece and handed him his card. "Your robot is defective," Walter read. "But we don't have a robot." From the hallway came the sound of rattling metal and a steady clank, clank, clank. The boy stared at the doorway as a shiny silver robot stepped into view. He was having trouble walking on the tiled floor. His head rotated back and forth and seemed to freeze on Walter. The robot's eyes lit up, and he spoke in an odd mechanical voice. "Emergency! Emergency! Alien life form! Must destroy!" His claw-like metal hand snapped open and shut. "Uh-oh," Danny whispered. "I think he's talking about you." Fortunately, when the robot stepped forward, he missed the door, banging into the wall, and fell into the floor. He got up and did it again, and then again. "Better hurry up and roll," said Walter, "before he makes it here." Danny rolled the dice and took the card. "You passed too close to Saurus 3. Gravity greatly increased." The room began to level out, but something strange was happening to Danny. Walter looked at him. "Holy smoke," he said. Danny was getting shorter and wider, too. Soon he was about the shape and size of a large beach ball. "Walter!" he said in a low voice. "I feel very heavy." "Destroy alien life forms," the robot repeated from the hall as he picked himself up again. This time he made it through the door and headed for Walter. Danny yelled to his brother, "Push me!" "What?" said Walter. "Push me!" Danny yelled again. "Just push me! Do it!" Walter bent down and gave his brother a shove. Danny rolled across the room and like a giant bowling ball knocked the robot over and flattened his legs. "Did I get him?" asked Danny, who couldn't see because he rolled up against the wall and was upside down. Walter pushed him back to the game board. "You sure did," he said, patting his brother's head. "You were terrific." Walter picked up the dice and rolled. He took his card, and his hand trembled as he read, "Zorgon pirate ship launches photon attack." Uh-oh. Through the window, the boy saw a spaceship. 2 points of light shot through the ship and headed directly for the Budwing house. The first one hit the chimney, sent bricks falling into the fireplace. The second hit the upstairs bathroom. Water began dripping down from the hole in the ceiling. Walter handed the dice to Danny, who had a hard time lifting his short, heavy arm. He rolled, and as Walter moved his token for him, he slowly returned to his normal shape. A card popped out. Danny read it silently. "This is bad," he said. "Zorgon pirates board your vessel." The room shook as the spaceship banged up against the house. The boys heard footsteps on the roof. Through the opening in the ceiling, they saw something or someone climb through the hole in the roof and enter the room above them. Danny and Walter moved to the hallway, standing behind the flattened robot. They held each other, too terrified to even move. A humming sound came from their feet. They looked down and saw the robot's eyes bling light up. He lifted his head, fixed his eyes on the hole in the ceiling, and spoke, "Alien life forms must destroy." His claw-like hands twitched, but he couldn't get up. Danny and Walter helped him to his feet. He staggered forward as the pirate's scaly tail and lizard-like legs swung down from the hole. The robot lifted one of his claws and snapped it sharply around the creature's tail. The Zorgon howled, jerking himself back through the hole with the robot still attached to his tail. He thrashed and wailed, banging against the walls overhead. Then, minus one arm, the robot dropped down through the hole. The boys heard the Zorgon scramble across the roof and saw the flash of his rockets as he sped away. It seemed hopeless. The robot's eyes were dark again. They'd been playing for almost 3 hours, and their tokens rested a galaxy away from Zathura and twice that far from Earth. "We're never going to make it," said Walter. "Sure we are," answered Danny. He handed the dice to his brother. "Me and you, together, we can do it. Family!" Walter cradled the dice in his hand and sighed. "It's you and I," he said wearily. "You and I." He looked at his little brother, who was grinning. "That's right," said Danny. "Together. We can do it. Together." Walter rolled the dice, a 1 and a 2. He moved his token to the only black square on the board, and the card popped out. "You have entered a black hole," Walter read. "Go back in time 1 hour for each mark on the dice." He jumped up and looked around the room. "You see any black holes?" His brother pointed to the floor. A black spot was slowly spreading under Walter's feet, like a perfectly round puddle of ink. At first, Walter thought that he was sinking into it, but it was the hole that was rising. He tried to run, but he could not feel his feet. Then, as the hole rose higher, he couldn't feel his legs either. "What's going on?" he cried. Danny looked below the disc-like hole. "Walter," he said, "the bottom part of you is gone." As the hole rose higher and higher, there was less and less of Walter until only his head remained. Danny tried to pull on the hole to save what was left of his brother, but his hands passed through the blackness as if it were made of smoke. His chin dropped to his chest, and he began to sob. "Danny," Walter called softly. Danny looked up at his brother's floating head. "Danny," he began, "I never told you this, but I—" And that was all he got to say, because the hole kept rising past his mouth, his nose, and finally, right over the top of his head. Walter was completely swallowed up, floating in empty darkness. He closed his eyes as he began to spin, plunging head over heels through pitch-black space. Then, thud! He landed hard on his knees. There was something in his arms, something wriggling around. He opened his eyes and found himself back in the park by his house. He had an arm wrapped tightly around Danny's neck and a hand gripping the boy's nose. "I'm kidding!" Danny squealed. Walter let go and fell back on the grass. He was dizzy, very dizzy. Danny jumped up and started to run, but stopped. "Hey," he said, "what's that?" He went to a tree and picked up a box resting against the trunk. He held the box out to Walter. "Look," he said, "it's some kind of game." Walter grabbed it. "Hey, give it back," said Danny. His big brother got to his feet. "You don't want to play this," he said. "Trust me, I tried it once." He went over to a trash can and jammed the box deep inside. "Come on," he said. "I got a better idea. Let's go play catch." Danny smiled. "You mean together? Me and you play?" Walter put his arm around his brother. "Yeah, that's right," he said. "Me and you, together." And that, guys, is the end of Zathura, a space adventure by Chris Van Allsburg. If you enjoyed that story, go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel, I guess. I don't know. I would normally tell you to go ahead and give me a hand clap. But we are all out of time. And if you enjoyed story time today, I hope you did. And you know what? We are all out of time. I've already said that, haven't I? Well, guys, I hope you have a great time. I can't wait to see you all again when we're in face-to-face school. It's going to be great. But until then, I'll be here every week bringing you fresh stories and fresh story times. Thank you so much for all you do, and I can't wait to see you. I miss you all so much. I really do. All right. Bye-bye.